Have you ever realized that no one really cares as much as you think they do? Not about your struggles, not about your worries, not about the nights you lie awake replaying every mistake. At first, that truth feels brutal, almost unbearable, but the moment you accept it, something shifts. You stop begging for recognition, you stop waiting for someone to validate your existence, and you finally begin to take back the power that was always yours. The Stoics knew this secret well. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus all lived with the awareness that freedom begins the moment you stop expecting others to carry your burdens. And when you embrace this, everything changes. Silence becomes a teacher. Solitude becomes strength. Rejection becomes redirection. You no longer depend on the outside world to define your worth. You build it yourself, unshakable, untouchable. In this episode, we'll uncover 10 of the most powerful Stoic lessons you will ever hear. Each one is designed to break illusions, sharpen your mind, and show you that you don't need applause, care, or validation to rise. These truths are not comfortable, but they are transformative. If you're ready to see the world and yourself with new eyes, stay with me. And if you find value here, consider joining our growing community by subscribing to Stoic Reflections. Not because you owe it, but because together we are building a space of clarity, strength, and timeless wisdom, something the world deeply needs. 1. The death of expectation. Few things enslave the human mind more than the silent weight of expectation. We expect others to notice our effort. We expect them to recognize our pain. We expect care, loyalty, gratitude, respect. And when these expectations are not met, we feel betrayed, invisible, abandoned. But the Stoics warned against this trap. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you are offended at someone's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." In other words, the more you demand from others, the more you chain yourself to disappointment. The moment you stop expecting, you reclaim your freedom. Expectation is dangerous because it secretly ties your well-being to forces outside of your control. If you expect praise, you hand strangers the keys to your mood. If you expect loyalty, you give others power to devastate you with their betrayal. If you expect life to always be fair, you will collapse the moment injustice arrives. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus warned his students, "Don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace." His wisdom is not about cynicism, but liberation. By letting go of expectation, you are no longer at the mercy of what others do or fail to do. Seneca went further. He explained that much of our suffering comes not from life itself, but from the stories we create about it. We expect things to unfold according to our script, and when reality resists, we suffer twice. Once from the event, and once from the broken expectation. He urged his students to prepare their minds for reality, not fantasy. If you expect hardship, you are never shocked when it arrives. If you expect nothing from others, their kindness feels like a gift, not a debt they owe you. Think about how much lighter life becomes when you release this burden. When you stop expecting people to read your mind, their silence no longer feels cruel. When you stop expecting constant recognition, your work becomes its own reward. When you stop expecting the world to understand your struggles, you discover the strength of carrying them with dignity. This is the death of expectation, not the death of hope or effort, but the end of illusions that keep you weak. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to practice this daily. He reminded himself in the morning that he would meet people who are selfish, arrogant, ungrateful, and deceitful. By expecting this, he was never caught off guard. He could respond with patience instead of anger, with calm instead of disappointment. His wisdom was simple. If you expect reality to be what it is, you are never betrayed by it. Practical application begins with awareness. Write down the expectations that secretly rule you. Do you expect friends to check in without being asked? Do you expect the world to reward your effort immediately? Do you expect life to feel fair? Then challenge each one. Ask yourself, is this within my control? If not, release it. Replace expectation with acceptance and notice how your inner state shifts. Instead of thinking, they should have treated me better, think, they acted according to who they are. My peace does not depend on them. This shift is the beginning of freedom. The death of expectation does not make you cold, it makes you free. You can still love people deeply, but without chaining yourself to their behavior. You can still work with passion, but without demanding constant validation. You can still hope for good outcomes, but without collapsing when setbacks arrive. You live lighter, stronger, steadier. So remember this: expectation is self-inflicted suffering. The more you demand from others, the weaker you become. The moment you stop waiting for anyone to save you, notice you, or applaud you, is the moment you reclaim your power. That is the true death of expectation and the birth of freedom. 2. Silence becomes your teacher. When you first discover that no one is coming to save you, the realization feels harsh. The silence of the world, the lack of applause, the absence of someone rushing to comfort you, it can feel like abandonment. But the Stoics remind us that silence is not cruelty. Silence is the arena where your strength is tested and your wisdom is born. Epictetus said, "When someone is properly grounded in life, they shouldn't have to look outside themselves for approval." What he meant is that silence is not emptiness. It is an invitation to build resilience within. We often believe that we learn best when surrounded by voices, teachers, friends, mentors, supporters. But too much noise drowns out the most important voice, your own. Marcus Aurelius frequently wrote to himself in solitude, not seeking answers from others, but drawing wisdom from silence. He reminded himself that life is short, that people will act according to their own nature, and that peace depends on mastering his inner dialogue. Without solitude, these reflections would have been impossible. Silence was his teacher, and his lessons became timeless. Seneca also spoke of silence as a crucible for wisdom. He argued that constant noise, the demands of crowds, the rush of business, the chatter of others, makes the soul restless and distracted. He wrote letters from moments of retreat, explaining that solitude and stillness sharpen perception. Only in silence, he believed, can a person measure what is truly essential. The lesson is clear. The absence of external voices allows the inner voice to speak louder. But silence is difficult because it exposes us. In the quiet, we can no longer run from our fears, regrets, or insecurities. Many people avoid solitude because they are terrified of facing themselves. They seek validation, distraction, or endless company, not because they love it, but because it shields them from silence. The Stoics, however, embraced it. They knew that if you can withstand silence, you become unbreakable. You learn to comfort yourself, to guide yourself, to strengthen yourself without needing an audience. This is why Epictetus told his students not to depend on others to make them whole. He said, "If you want to be independent, do not wish for things that depend on others." Silence trains this independence. When no one applauds, you must applaud yourself. When no one rescues you, you must carry yourself. When no one answers, you must create the answers. Slowly, you realize that the quiet is not empty at all. It is full of possibility. Practical application begins with embracing solitude instead of running from it. Set aside moments each day where you sit with silence. No phone, no noise, no distractions. Reflect on your thoughts. Ask yourself, what do I fear? What am I avoiding? What truths am I hiding from in the noise of daily life? At first, this feels uncomfortable, even unbearable. But as you continue, silence transforms from enemy to ally. It clears the fog and sharpens your mind. In silence, you also learn emotional control. Without constant validation, you discover that your emotions rise and fall without external influence. You learn to watch them instead of being consumed by them. You begin to see anger, sadness, and fear as temporary visitors, not permanent truths. This awareness is the foundation of Stoic calm, understanding that your mind is the final authority, not the noise around you. Marcus Aurelius captured this beautifully when he wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That retreat is silence. It is not isolation from the world. It is connection with the deepest part of yourself. From that connection comes strength, clarity, and unshakable peace. So remember this: silence is not punishment. It is preparation. It strips away illusions, teaches you self-reliance, and sharpens your vision. When you stop fearing silence, you turn it into your greatest teacher. And once you can thrive in the absence of applause, you will never again depend on it. 3. Detach from being seen. One of the deepest traps a human can fall into is building their entire identity around being noticed. From a young age, we are conditioned to crave recognition, praise from parents, approval from teachers, validation from peers. This hunger follows us into adulthood, where we measure our worth by how many eyes are watching, how many people applaud, how often we are remembered. But the Stoics warned that this dependence on being seen is a kind of slavery. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." In other words, being seen is not the same as being valued, and it certainly is not the same as being free. When you tie your self-worth to visibility, you become invisible to yourself. You perform not for your own growth, but for the applause of others. You bend your values to gain approval. You exaggerate your achievements so they seem more impressive. You sacrifice authenticity to be noticed, and in the process, you lose the only recognition that matters, your own. This is why detaching from being seen is such a powerful act. It is not indifference, it is liberation. Epictetus was clear on this point. He told his students, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Improvement often happens in obscurity. Growth is not glamorous. When you learn in silence, when you discipline yourself in private, when you fail without an audience, you may look invisible to the world, but in truth, you are building something that cannot be shaken. To detach from being seen is to choose depth over display, substance over performance. Seneca too criticized those who lived only to be noticed. He believed that true strength lies in living according to reason and virtue, not in chasing recognition. He wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." The same applies to recognition. The more you crave it, the more starved you become, no matter how much you receive. But the man who detaches from it is rich, because he needs nothing outside himself to confirm his worth. Modern life magnifies this trap through constant exposure. Social media, endless comparisons, the urge to display every detail. These feed the addiction to being seen. The irony is that the more we try to be visible, the emptier we often feel. True presence does not come from noise, it comes from silence. The Stoics would say, live in such a way that even if no one ever saw or praised you, your life would still be worth living. Practical application means shifting your focus inward. Instead of asking, did they notice me? Ask, did I stay true to my values? Instead of craving the spotlight, practice contentment in obscurity. Train yourself to find satisfaction in private victories. The workout no one applauded, the promise you kept to yourself, the moment you resisted anger when no one was watching. These acts may be invisible to others, but they are the bricks that build your character. Detaching from being seen also protects you from manipulation. When people know you crave recognition, they can control you with it, giving or withholding approval to bend your behavior. But when you no longer depend on it, you become untouchable. Your worth is no longer in their hands, it is in your actions. You live not for their eyes, but for your own soul. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this truth when he wrote, "Be content with what you are, and wish not to be elsewhere or otherwise." To detach from being seen is to finally live according to this wisdom. You no longer need the gaze of the world to feel alive. You begin to see yourself clearly, and in that clarity you discover freedom. So remember this, the hunger to be noticed makes you invisible to yourself. The moment you let go of the need to be seen is the moment you start to truly live. The Stoics did not seek applause, they sought virtue. Follow their path, and you will find that greatness does not require visibility. It requires authenticity. 4. Rejection is redirection. One of the greatest illusions we suffer from is the belief that rejection is proof of our inadequacy. When someone ignores us, dismisses us, or closes a door in our face, we translate that event into a statement about our worth. I am not enough. I am unworthy. I am a failure. But the Stoics challenge this illusion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." What he meant is that rejection itself is neutral. It does not wound you unless you decide to interpret it as a wound. The Stoics saw rejection not as a final judgment, but as information. It shows you where your energy does not belong, where your path must shift, where your strength must be redirected. Seneca, reflecting on the blows of fortune, reminded his students that setbacks are not punishments, but training. Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor strengthens the body. Rejection is one of those difficulties. It stings, but it points you toward growth. Epictetus was especially clear on this. He warned his students never to tie their peace to external acceptance. If you want to be free, do not wish for things to happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do. This includes rejection. If someone turns away, if an opportunity closes, if recognition is denied, accept it as it is and redirect your energy where it will be valued. In this acceptance, you are never broken, only guided. Think of rejection as nature's way of pruning. Just as a gardener cuts away branches that no longer serve the tree, life cuts away paths, people, and possibilities that do not serve your growth. At first, the cut feels like loss, but in time, it reveals itself as space. Space for healthier growth, stronger branches, clearer direction. The Stoics would say, do not curse the pruning. Trust that it clears the way for something better aligned with your purpose. Modern life often teaches the opposite. We are told that rejection defines us, that being ignored is humiliation, that closed doors are failures. But this mindset keeps people paralyzed, clinging to places where they are not respected, begging for recognition where it will never come. The Stoics remind us, rejection is not the end of your path. It is the signpost pointing you to a better one. Practical application begins with reframing the story you tell yourself. Instead of saying, "They didn't want me, I must be worthless," say, "This is not where I am meant to invest my energy." Instead of obsessing over why someone ignored you, ask, "Where should I redirect my time and strength?" Each rejection becomes a compass, guiding you toward better alignment. Marcus Aurelius embodied this mindset during constant political resistance. As emperor, he faced betrayal, criticism, and opposition, even from those closest to him. Yet he did not collapse under their rejection. He accepted it as part of life and focused his energy on fulfilling his duty. His greatness came not from being universally accepted, but from persisting where it mattered. Seneca offered similar advice. Do not measure yourself by others' acceptance. If your path is guided by reason, virtue, and discipline, then rejection cannot harm you. In fact, it sharpens you. It teaches resilience, self-reliance, and independence. Each closed door becomes an opportunity to test your strength, to prove to yourself that your worth is not for others to grant or deny. So remember this: rejection is not the world telling you that you are weak. It is the world telling you that your energy belongs elsewhere. It is redirection, not defeat. The Stoics lived by this truth, refusing to tie their peace to the acceptance of others. Follow their wisdom, and you will see rejection not as a wound, but as a teacher, one that points you toward freedom, clarity, and strength. 5. Self-reliance is real freedom. One of the deepest truths in Stoic philosophy is that the moment you stop outsourcing your peace to others, you stop being fragile. Most of our suffering comes from believing that we need someone else to validate us, rescue us, or make us whole. But when you place your happiness in the hands of others, you hand them the power to destroy it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." This is the essence of dependence, valuing external voices above your own. Real freedom begins when you break this pattern and learn to rely on yourself. Self-reliance is not isolation or coldness. The Stoics were not against community, friendship, or love. They valued these deeply, but they warned against dependency, the idea that without someone else's approval or presence, you are incomplete. Epictetus said, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." His point was clear: always bring the responsibility back to yourself. When you rely on yourself to process pain, to grow, to heal, no one else has the power to shatter you. Seneca often described how people weaken themselves by tying their peace to fortune, to status, or to the love of others. These things are fragile, temporary, and outside your control. He warned, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it." In other words, relying on what is not yours to control makes you a prisoner. Relying on your own reason, discipline, and choices makes you free. Modern life constantly tempts us to seek external solutions. We expect others to heal our wounds, to make us happy, to carry our burdens. But this expectation is what keeps us weak. Self-reliance does not mean rejecting help when it comes. It means not depending on it for survival. It means being able to stand alone when necessary, to carry your own weight, to remain unshaken when support is absent. Think of Marcus Aurelius, who faced plague, betrayal, and constant political strife. As emperor, he could not always count on loyalty or comfort. Yet his meditations reveal a man who turned inward for strength. He reminded himself that no matter how chaotic the empire became, his mind remained his own. That inner fortress was his true power, his unshakable freedom. Practical application begins with small steps. Instead of expecting others to solve your problems, ask, "What can I do now with what I have?" Instead of seeking constant comfort from friends or family, practice sitting with discomfort and guiding yourself through it. Build daily habits that make you strong: discipline, reflection, self-control. Each time you face hardship without collapsing into dependency, you add another brick to your fortress of self-reliance. The beauty of self-reliance is that it does not make you harder to love, it makes you easier to respect. People admire those who stand firm, who do not beg for validation, who do not crumble at rejection. When you no longer need others to make you whole, you can engage with them from strength, not desperation. Your relationships become healthier because they are based on choice, not on need. So remember this: self-reliance is real freedom. It is the power to stand when others walk away. It is the ability to heal without begging for care. It is the quiet strength of knowing that no matter what happens outside, your inner world remains unshaken. The Stoics remind us that the one who masters himself is freer than the one who rules nations. Build this freedom daily, and you will discover that self-reliance is not loneliness, it is liberation. 6. Privacy protects your power. In a world obsessed with exposure, the Stoics would remind us of a forgotten truth. Not every wound needs an audience. Not every struggle requires broadcasting. Not every thought should be laid bare. The more you expose, the more you dilute your own strength. The more you keep sacred, the more power you retain. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." When you hand your private struggles to the crowd, you give them control over your healing, your growth, and your peace. Privacy, instead, turns pain into wisdom rather than performance. Today, we live in an age where privacy is almost seen as weakness. People are encouraged to share every detail of their lives, successes, failures, wounds, even moments of grief, for likes, validation, and recognition. But what does this achieve? It often leaves the soul emptier, because instead of processing pain quietly and deeply, it gets scattered across 100 shallow opinions. The Stoics would say this disperses your energy, making you fragile. Epictetus warned, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Improvement often happens in silence, hidden from public view. Seneca also emphasized restraint. He urged people not to make a spectacle of their suffering. He believed that strength is proven not by how loudly you declare your pain, but by how quietly you endure and transform it. He wrote, "It is difficulties that show what men are. To turn every difficulty into a performance is to weaken its lesson. To keep some struggles private is to allow them to refine you in secret, shaping you into someone whose strength does not depend on external recognition. Privacy protects your power because it prevents dilution. The more you scatter your inner life across the opinions of others, the less ownership you have of it. If you share every wound, others will judge it, question it, and perhaps even use it against you. But when you hold certain battles close, you retain control over their meaning. You decide how to transform them. You decide how they shape you. No one else. Practical application of this principle is simple but demanding. Stop oversharing. You don't need to announce every failure, every hurt, every dream. Choose carefully what you reveal and to whom. Keep your deepest struggles sacred and process them in solitude, reflection, or in the company of only the wisest and most trusted. When you protect your inner life this way, you preserve your energy for growth rather than scattering it for attention. Marcus Aurelius himself modeled this. His meditations were never written for the public. They were his private reflections, a dialogue with himself, a space to process his pain and discipline his mind. Had he written them for applause, they would have been diluted. Because he wrote them in privacy, their wisdom is raw, powerful, unfiltered. His greatest strength came not from performance, but from honest self-reflection. Privacy also builds mystery, and mystery commands respect. When others cannot read your every thought, when they cannot predict your every move, your presence grows stronger. You are no longer desperate to be understood, and paradoxically, this makes you more respected. Quiet power is greater than noisy weakness. So remember, not everything needs to be said. Not every pain needs to be displayed. Not every victory needs to be shouted. Privacy protects your power. It keeps your energy concentrated, your dignity intact, and your growth authentic. The Stoics remind us that strength is proven not in how loudly you share your wounds, but in how silently you transform them into wisdom. 7. Solitude transforms you. At first, solitude feels like exile, the absence of company, the silence of empty rooms, the realization that no one is coming to fill the void. It can feel unbearable. But the Stoics knew that solitude, when embraced with intention, is not punishment. It is a furnace that burns away weakness and reveals clarity, resilience, and self-trust. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." What he meant is that solitude is not an absence of connection, it is the presence of yourself. And until you can be at peace alone, you will never be free among others. Most people fear solitude because it strips away distraction. Surrounded by others, you can avoid yourself. You can drown out your doubts with noise, cover your insecurities with attention, and escape your thoughts in constant activity. But when you are alone, there is no escape. You are forced to face your own mind. This is why so many run from solitude. They are terrified of meeting themselves. The Stoics, however, taught the opposite. Run towards solitude, because only there will you discover who you truly are. Seneca emphasized the power of retreat, not as withdrawal from life, but as renewal for the soul. He wrote, "We should withdraw into ourselves, for it is in the inner man that truth dwells." To him, solitude was not laziness or cowardice, it was a workshop for the spirit. In solitude you reflect, you reorder your values, you sharpen your discipline. Without it, you risk living a life that is reactive, shallow, and entirely shaped by the noise of others. Epictetus also urged his students to practice self-sufficiency. He reminded them that relying too much on company, applause, or external validation makes the soul fragile. When you are alone, call this condition peace and freedom, and look upon it as the way that the gods live. This reframes solitude not as loss, but as privilege. The gods do not need endless chatter or approval to feel whole. Why should you? But solitude must be intentional. Isolation without purpose can lead to bitterness or despair. The Stoics teach that solitude should be used as a time for training, disciplining your mind, reflecting on your actions, strengthening your self-mastery. When used this way, loneliness transforms into clarity. You stop fearing silence and begin listening to the wisdom hidden within it. Practical application means deliberately creating space for solitude in your daily life. Turn off distractions, step away from noise, spend time journaling, reflecting, or simply sitting with your thoughts. At first, it may feel uncomfortable, even painful, because you will encounter the parts of yourself you usually avoid. But with practice, Solitude becomes the strongest foundation you have. It teaches you that you are capable of carrying yourself, that you can endure silence without breaking, that you can be your own anchor when the world feels unstable. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor of Rome, carved out time for solitude in the midst of war, politics, and chaos. His meditations are proof of this discipline. They are not grand speeches or public declarations. They are quiet conversations with himself. In those moments of solitude, he refined his strength, anchored his purpose, and kept his sanity intact. If solitude could transform the most powerful man in the world, it can transform you too. So remember, solitude is not exile. It is transformation. Loneliness may sting at first, but if you embrace it, it becomes clarity, strength, and self-trust. The one who learns to stand firmly in solitude becomes unshakable in company. The one who fears being alone will always be dependent, fragile, and at the mercy of others. The Stoics remind us that solitude, far from being a curse, is one of life's greatest teachers, if you have the courage to enter it. 8. The old self must die. There comes a point in every life where the person you have been can no longer take you where you need to go. The version of you that craved approval, that lived for recognition, that depended on being noticed. This self is outdated. It was built on fragility, on illusions, on chains. To grow into freedom, that old self must die. The Stoics understood this not as a dramatic event, but as a daily shedding of weakness. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Constantly regard the universe as one living being. Constantly regard yourself as a limb of this being." In other words, you must evolve with life's flow, letting go of the smaller self that clings to comfort and validation. Seneca described life as a process of continual rebirth. Each day, he wrote, is a new life, and with each new life, the old habits, illusions, and weaknesses must be left behind. If you cling to them, you suffer. If you release them, you evolve. The person you were yesterday may have been addicted to the opinions of others. The person you are today can begin the work of independence. The person you will be tomorrow, if you persist, will be unshakable. The old self's death is not tragedy. It is progress. Epictetus put it bluntly, "Why then are you not content to be improved? Only see what you were before and what you are now." He encouraged his students to recognize their growth, not as a betrayal of the old self, but as proof of transformation. But he also warned that improvement requires sacrifice. The old self will resist. It will cling, protest, and beg to survive. It whispers, "Stay the same. Stay comfortable, stay noticed." To reject this voice is painful but necessary. This death is not about hating who you were. It is about honoring who you are becoming. The self that chased validation served a purpose. It kept you alive. It helped you navigate early struggles. But now it is too small. The Stoics teach that clinging to it is like refusing to leave childhood toys behind. Growth demands maturity, and maturity demands letting go. Practical application begins with honest reflection. Ask yourself, which parts of me are no longer serving me? Which habits, beliefs, or attachments keep me fragile? Write them down. Then, consciously practice releasing them. For example, if you habitually seek praise, resist the urge and let your actions stand alone. If you depend on constant company, spend time in solitude. If you fear disapproval, expose yourself to it without retreat. Each time you choose the new self, the old self weakens. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily death by reminding himself that life itself is fleeting. He wrote, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly. By imagining himself already dead, he freed himself from the illusions of the old self. He no longer needed approval or recognition. What mattered was living according to virtue, here and now. Seneca too embraced this concept of daily death. He argued that death is not just the end of life, but a process that happens constantly. Each day the old self dies, and a new one emerges. To resist this process is to stagnate. To embrace it is to evolve. When you let go of the outdated self, you create space for the stronger self to emerge. So remember, the old self must die. The version of you addicted to approval, fragile in solitude, desperate to be noticed, that self cannot carry you into freedom. Do not mourn its death. Honor it for what it was, then let it go. In its place, build the self that is calm, disciplined, self-reliant, and unshakable. This death is not the end. It is the beginning of who you were always meant to be. 9. Quiet power is unstoppable. In a world where everyone is shouting to be noticed, there is something magnetic about the one who stays calm, steady, and silent. The Stoics understood that true authority does not need noise. It does not demand attention, it commands it. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth, yet his writings are not filled with boasts or declarations of strength. Instead, they reveal a man who sought calm, reason, and restraint. His power was not in his words, but in his presence. That is the essence of quiet power, and once you embrace it, you become unstoppable. Noise is often a disguise for insecurity. People who constantly explain, defend, or advertise themselves do so because they are unsure of their worth. They confuse volume with strength. But Seneca warned that the wise do not need to prove themselves through noise. He wrote, "We should conduct ourselves not by words, but by deeds." When your actions align with virtue, when your discipline is visible in how you live, you no longer need to shout. Your life speaks for itself. Epictetus was even more direct. He told his students, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Quiet power is this embodiment. It is walking through life with such integrity and steadiness that you radiate authority without effort. You don't have to defend your choices or beg for respect. Your calm composure earns it naturally. The more you practice restraint, the more people listen when you finally do speak, because they know your words are not wasted. Quiet power is also unshakable because it does not depend on others. Noise seeks validation, applause, recognition, agreement. Silence, on the other hand, draws its strength from within. When you no longer need to be seen or heard constantly, you become untouchable. Insults lose their sting, criticism loses its control, and rejection becomes irrelevant. You are not weakened by noise because you do not depend on it. Think of water flowing steadily through stone. It does not roar, it does not announce itself. Yet over time it carves canyons, reshapes landscapes, and proves its strength in silence. This is what quiet power looks like in a human life. A disciplined routine followed daily, a calm response to provocation, a steady pursuit of growth. These silent acts reshape character more powerfully than any outburst ever could. Practical application means practicing restraint. When you are insulted, resist the urge to respond with equal noise. When you are overlooked, resist the urge to advertise yourself. Instead, let your actions continue to build proof. Over time, those who ignored you will be unable to deny the authority you have built in silence. Quiet power is patient. It does not chase recognition, but it always earns it. Marcus Aurelius modelled this during times of political chaos. While others schemed, shouted, and sought to dominate through aggression, he maintained calm and composure. His authority did not come from dramatic speeches, but from his steadiness under pressure. His enemies respected him not because of noise, but because of the quiet power that radiated from his discipline. The paradox of quiet power is that the less you demand attention, the more you attract it. People are naturally drawn to those who cannot be shaken, who do not beg for recognition, who do not need to prove themselves with noise. This is why quiet power is unstoppable. It is built on substance, not performance. So remember this: noise fades, but quiet authority endures. Do not waste your energy performing for attention. Build your strength in silence. Let your calmness become your shield, and let your actions speak louder than any words. The Stoics remind us that true power does not shout, it radiates, and once you embody this, nothing outside of you can shake it. 10. You don't need to be seen to be great. One of the most liberating Stoic truths is that greatness does not require an audience. In fact, the need to be seen is often what prevents true greatness from ever forming. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often that fame is fleeting, writing, "All is ephemeral, fame and the famous as well." The applause of today is forgotten tomorrow. Entire empires have crumbled, their rulers' names erased by time. If greatness depended on being remembered or noticed, then almost every human life would be meaningless. But the Stoics taught the opposite. Greatness is measured not by recognition, but by virtue, by who you become when no one is watching. The desire to be seen is seductive. It whispers that if only people notice you, your life will finally matter. It pushes you to perform rather than to live, to seek recognition rather than truth. Seneca warned against this hunger, saying, "What is the worth of a man if he stands in need of witnesses to be valued?" In other words, if your greatness only exists when others see it, it is fragile. True greatness exists in silence, in private, in the consistency of your daily actions. Epictetus was even harsher in his advice. He told his students not to live for the eyes of others, but to live in accordance with nature and reason. If you wish to be a writer, write. If you wish to be a philosopher, live as one. Notice he did not say, "Be acknowledged as one." He meant that greatness is self-contained. You are great the moment your actions align with virtue, whether anyone notices or not. Think of a seed planted deep in the soil. It is unseen for months, hidden in darkness, yet it is there that its strength is built. The roots grow, the foundation deepens, and only later does the tree emerge. But the greatness of that tree did not begin when it was seen. It began in the unseen work below the surface. So it is with you. Your unseen efforts, your quiet discipline, your private victories, these are where your greatness is truly born. Modern culture trains us to believe the opposite. We are taught that visibility is the same as worth. Followers, likes, applause, these are the counterfeit currencies of greatness. But they are fragile, and the soul that depends on them is always poor. The Stoics remind us that you do not need to be visible to be valuable. A life lived with integrity, wisdom, and discipline has greatness, even if the world never claps. Practical application begins with reframing your goals. Instead of asking, "Will they notice me?" ask, "Am I living in alignment with my values?" Instead of craving recognition, practice contentment in obscurity. Write the book, even if no one reads it. Train your body, even if no one sees the results. Reflect daily, even if no one applauds your wisdom. These acts are not wasted. They are the roots of greatness. Marcus Aurelius himself never wrote his meditations to be published or celebrated. They were private notes to himself, exercises in philosophy, tools for survival. He did not need to be seen to be great. And yet, precisely because he wrote without seeking recognition, his words carry unmatched authenticity and strength, echoing across centuries. His greatness was not in being seen, it was in being true. So remember this: you don't need to be seen to be great. You don't need applause, validation, or an audience. You need discipline, self-mastery, and alignment with virtue. The world may ignore you now, but that does not make your life meaningless. True greatness is self-contained. Build it in silence, live it in action, and let time itself bear witness. Recognition may or may not come, but your greatness does not depend on it. At the end of all these reflections, the Stoics leave us with a truth both unsettling and liberating. You do not need to be noticed, applauded, or even remembered to live a great life. The world may never care about your struggles, but that does not diminish your strength. Recognition may never come, but that does not erase your virtue. The crowd may stay silent, but within that silence, you discover the voice that truly matters, your own. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus remind us that freedom begins the moment we stop depending on others to define our worth. The death of expectation frees us. Silence teaches us. Solitude strengthens us. And when the old self that craved approval finally dies, what remains is something unshakable: quiet power, self-reliance, and the unbreakable truth that greatness can exist even in obscurity. So carry this with you. You don't need to be seen to be great. You don't need to be validated to live with purpose. Build your life in silence, protect your dignity with privacy, and trust that the roots you cultivate unseen will grow into a presence the world cannot ignore. If this message has given you strength, I invite you to subscribe to Stoic Reflections, to like this video, and to share your thoughts in the comments. Not because validation is needed, but because together we are building a community that chooses depth over noise, wisdom over distraction, and timeless strength over fleeting applause.